Wesley slammed the truck door shut behind him, the echo bouncing off the brick walls of the Pike Place Market parking lot, his breath coming in ragged bursts as he wiped the rain from his face. It had been 6 years since that night in the garage, but the memory clawed its way back every time the sky opened up like this, turning the city into a blurred watercolor of neon signs and shadowed alleys. He was 28 now, taller than his father had ever been, with shoulders broadened by years of hauling lumber and late-night doubts, but inside, he still felt like that scrawny kid, 19 and terrified, whispering his truth into the void of Harlan's unyielding stare. That confession had been a spark in dry tinder. Wesley had known for years, piecing it together in stolen glances at the high school quarterback during shop class, in the way his pulse raced at the sight of a boy's bare arm under the summer sun filtering through the evergreens outside their modest bungalow in Capitol Hill. But saying it aloud, to Harlan, the man who built Whitaker Construction from a one-man sawmill operation into a mid-sized firm specializing in eco-friendly urban rehabs, had been like dropping a match into gasoline. Harlan hadn't yelled at first. He'd just set down his coffee mug, the ceramic clinking against the scarred oak table, and fixed Wesley with those steel-grey eyes that had stared down foremen and bankers alike. This family's legacy is blood and sweat, boy. Not some fairy tale weakness. You fix this, or you fix yourself out of here. Wesley had chosen the latter, packing a duffel bag that same night and crashing on a cousin's couch in Fremont, the neighborhood's quirky vibe a stark contrast to the rigid lines of his upbringing. He bounced through odd jobs, barista slinging overpriced lattes to tech bros, delivery driver navigating the labyrinth of one-way streets, but the ache for home gnawed at him. Seattle was his city, with its fog-shrouded ferry slicing through Puget Sound and the perpetual drizzle that made everything feel like a half-remembered dream. Yet every corner whispered reminders, the community college where he'd sketched blueprints in secret, dreaming of architecture, the shadowed parks where he'd first kissed a boy under the cover of midnight, hearts pounding in sync with the distant wail of sirens. It was on one of those drizzly autumn mornings, 3 years into his exile, that Wesley crossed paths with Theo. The coffee shop on Queen and Hill was packed, the air thick with the scent of roasted beans and wet wool coats. Wesley was behind the counter, apron tied loose around his waist, when Theo walked in, a vision in faded Levi's and a wool peacoat that hugged his lean frame like it was made for him. Dark curls framed a face that could have been chiseled from the same rain-worn basalt as the Olympic Mountains, with olive skin and eyes the color of smoked amber, carrying a quiet intensity that made the room feel smaller. Large black, no room, Theo said, his voice low and steady, laced with that faint East Coast edge, maybe Boston, Wesley guessed, from the clipped vowels. Their fingers brushed as Theo handed over his card, and Wesley felt it like a current, that electric pull that had been dormant since his last fumbling hookup in a Belltown dive bar. He swiped the card, handed it back, and managed a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Rough morning? Theo's gaze lingered, not pitying, but seeing. The kind where the rain feels personal. You? Always. Wesley turned to pour the coffee, but Theo didn't move, leaning against the counter as if he had all the time in the world. They talked, halting at first, about the Mariners' latest loss, the absurdity of gluten-free scones, until the line backed up and Wesley had to wave him off with a promise of next time. Next time came faster than expected. Theo became a regular, showing up with dog-eared architecture magazines under his arm, dropping facts about sustainable builds that made Wesley's hidden passion flare. Turns out Theo was a junior project manager at a rival firm, Cascade Builds, fresh off a stint in New York where he'd cut his teeth on high-rises that scraped the clouds. Seattle's got soul, Theo said one afternoon, as they shared a bench overlooking the Sound, the water churning grey under a slate sky. Back east, everything's concrete and rush. Here, you can breathe. Wesley nodded, his knee brushing Theo's accidentally on purpose. Breathing's overrated when you're dodging ghosts. He hadn't meant to say it, but Theo had that effect, drawing truths out like venom from a wound. They kissed for the first time that evening, under the awning of a shuttered bookstore, Theo's hands framing Wesley's face with a gentleness that bordered on reverence. It was soft, exploratory, tasting of salt from the sea air and the faint bitterness of Theo's coffee. Wesley's world tilted, the rain a curtain sealing them in their own private storm. Their relationship unfolded like one of those indie films Seattle birthed, slow burns and stolen moments amid the grind. Weekends hiking the trails of Discovery Park, where the forest met the beach in a tangle of salt-stiffened pines, Theo's laughter echoing as they raced, waves lapping at driftwood-strewn shores. Evenings tangled in Theo's tiny apartment in Ballard, the kind with exposed brick and a Murphy bed that creaked under their weight, bodies moving in rhythms that erased the day's fractures. Theo was out and proud, his family a distant but supportive hum from back east, and he coaxed Wesley into the open with patient hands and whispered encouragements. "You're not broken, Wes. You're just waiting for the right foundation." But foundations cracked, and Wesley's was built on Whitaker blood. Harlan's company had been his grandfather's dream, turning felled cedars into homes that dotted the city's hills. Now, at 62, Harlan was slowing, his hands gnarled from decades of hammer swings, and whispers of financial strain rippled through the crew. Wesley kept tabs from afar, nursing beers with old buddies at the Elkie Tavern, hearing how bids were slipping, how competitors like Cascade were undercutting with flashy green tech. He ached to step in, to apply the drafting skills he'd honed in night classes, but pride, or fear, kept him sidelined. The call came on a crisp October evening, the kind where the leaves turned the streets into fire. Brody, Wesley's older brother by 5 years, the golden child who'd stayed and apprenticed under Harlan's watchful eye, his voice tight over the line. "Dad's had a fall, Wes. Slipped on the site scaffold. Docs say it's a busted hip, but he's stubborn as hell. Come home." Home. The word tasted like ash. Wesley drove through the night, windshield wipers slashing at the downpour, Theo's texts lighting up his phone like beacons. "Drive safe. We're in this." The hospital in First Hill was a sterile maze of beeps and bleach, Harlan pale against starched sheets, Brody pacing like a caged wolf. "About time," Harlan grunted when Wesley entered, his eyes flicking over him, not with warmth, but appraisal. "Family sticks, even when it don't fit." The weeks blurred into a tense vigil. Wesley took leave from the coffee shop, crashing in his old room at the family house in Capitol Hill, the walls still papered with faded maps of construction sites. Harlan's recovery was grueling, physical therapy sessions where he'd bark orders at nurses like they were subcontractors, but beneath the bluster, Wesley glimpsed fractures. Late nights, when the house settled into quiet, Harlan would talk, haltingly, about the war his own father waged against softness, how he'd buried his doubts under layers of timber and tariffs. "I built this to prove something, son. Didn't know it'd chain me." Brody, meanwhile, simmered. Always the reliable one, with his crew-cut and easy grin that masked a ledger of resentments, he'd shouldered the company solo while Wesley wandered. "You think you can waltz back and play hero," he'd hiss in the kitchen, over lukewarm coffee, while Harlan dozed upstairs. "Dad's legacy ain't a toy for your little distractions." The word landed like shrapnel, reopening the garage wound. But Wesley held ground, diving into the books when Harlan pushed them his way. Numbers swam before him, overextended loans, a botched contract with a downtown developer that had Cascade swooping in like vultures. Theo helped, evenings poring over spreadsheets in the dim glow of a desk lamp, his fingers tracing Wesley's tense shoulders. "This is your shot, Wes. Not revenge. Redemption." Redemption came laced with lightning. By spring, Harlan was hobbling on a cane, the company teetering on bankruptcy's edge. Wesley proposed a pivot, sustainable rehabs for aging Victorians, blending old bones with solar panels and reclaimed wood. The crew grumbled at first, traditionalists clinging to Harlan's old ways, but prototypes won them over, bids flowing like the returning salmon in the Duwamish. Theo's firm even collaborated on a pilot, their worlds colliding in site meetings where stolen glances across blueprints sparked like live wires. Yet betrayal brewed in the shadows. Brody, eyeing the shifting power, struck a deal behind closed doors, selling a chunk of land Harlan had earmarked for expansion to Cascade, pocketing a finder's fee to fund his gambling debts. Wesley uncovered it by accident, a stray email on Brody's laptop during a late-night crunch. The betrayal hit like a felled beam, not just the theft, but the echo of Harlan's voice in Brody's choices: "Prove you're a man." "Why?" Wesley confronted him in the empty office, rain lashing the windows like accusations. This could have been ours. Brody's face twisted, sweat beading on his brow. Yours? You left, Wes. Chose your bed over blood. Dad's fading, and I'm the one holding the hammer. He shoved past, but the damage was done. Harlan, overhearing from the doorway, collapsed into a chair, his cane clattering to the floor. The old man's eyes, once unyielding, cracked open to reveal a chasm of regret. I taught you boys wrong. Thought strength was in the swing, not the stand. The crisis crested that summer, under a relentless sun that baked the city dry. Harlan called a family meeting in the boardroom of the Whitaker headquarters, a converted warehouse on the waterfront where the air smelled of salt and sawdust. Investors hovered, cascades circling with a hostile takeover bid sweetened by Brody's inside track. Wesley stood at the head of the table, heart thundering, laying out the vision, a company reborn, not as a relic, but a bridge between past and future. This isn't about proving manhood, he said, voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. It's about building something that lasts, for all of us, as we are. Theo was there, in the back, his presence a silent anchor. Harlan, cane-gripped white-knuckled, met Wesley's gaze across the polished oak. Silence stretched, thick as fog rolling in from the sound. Then, Harlan nodded, slow and deliberate. You're the man for it, son. Always were. Brody stormed out, the door slamming like a final nail, but in that fracture, something mended. The board voted unanimously, Cascade's bid crumbling like dry rot. Healing didn't come in a rush, but in quiet increments. Harlan moved into a bungalow near the office, trading oversight for mentorship, his stories now laced with vulnerability, tales of a college roommate he'd loved in secret, buried under the weight of expectation. Wesley and Theo bought a fixer-upper in Finney Ridge, weekends spent sanding floors and dreaming aloud, their love a steady joist holding up the walls. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the kitchen gold, Harlan knocked, a bottle of bourbon in hand. Heard you closed the Elliott Bay project. Damn fine work. He paused, eyes misting. I'm proud, Wesley. Of the man you are. Wesley pulled him into a hug, the embrace awkward at first, then fierce, years of rain washing away in that simple hold. Outside, Seattle hummed on, ferries tooting, streets alive with laughter, a city of reinventions, where even the deepest foundations could shift and stand taller. The autumn after the takeover settled over Seattle like a well-worn blanket, cool and comforting, with leaves carpeting the sidewalks in shades of amber and rust. Wesley woke to the sound of Theo humming in the kitchen, the rich aroma of pancakes drifting up the stairs of their Finney Ridge Victorian. It was their first fall in the house, the one they'd snatched at auction for a song, its bones solid but begging for love, much like them. He padded downstairs in boxers and a faded Whitaker tee, wrapping his arms around Theo from behind as the man flipped a golden disc in the cast-iron skillet. Morning, boss man, Theo murmured, leaning back into the embrace, his curls tickling Wesley's chin. The endearment still sent a thrill through him, a reminder that this, domesticity laced with passion, was his now, hard-won and fiercely guarded. Wesley nuzzled his neck, inhaling the clean scent of soap and citrus. Smells like victory. Or at least Saturday. He stole a bite from the stack, syrup dripping sticker sweet, and Theo laughed, swatting him with a dish towel. It was these moments that anchored him, countering the corporate world that had consumed his days since Harlan's handover. Whitaker Construction was thriving, contracts stacking like cordwood, retrofits for low-income co-ops in the Central District, green expansions for tech startups in South Lake Union. Wesley's designs blended Harlan's sturdy pragmatism with Theo's innovative flair, turning eyesores into sanctuaries that whispered of resilience. But success had its undercurrents. Brody's absence loomed like a ghost in the machine. After the boardroom blowout, he'd vanished, rumors filtering back of stints in Reno casinos, a hasty divorce from his high school sweetheart. Harlan tried reaching out once, a terse voicemail that went unanswered, but the old man had softened in defeat, trading barbs for reflections over chess in the office lounge. He was always chasing my shadow, Harlan admitted one evening, as rain pattered the skylight. Didn't see he was running from his own. Wesley nodded, moving a pawn with deliberate care. We all were. The admission hung between them, a bridge mending slowly. Harlan's health held steady, the hip replacement granting him mobility for short walks along the waterfront, where he'd point out the scars of old builds, stories unfolding like blueprints unrolled. For the first time, Wesley saw his father not as monolith, but mosaic, flaws glinting in the light. Theo, ever the steady current, wove through it all. Their relationship deepened in the quiet hours, lazy Sundays sketching elevations on the living room rug, bodies entwined after, tracing maps on skin instead of paper. But intimacy brought its own vulnerabilities. One night, post-dinner at a cozy spot in Fremont, dim Edison bulbs casting halos over craft ales, Theo grew quiet, his fork pushing peas around the plate like unsolved equations. Spill, Wesley prompted, covering Theo's hand with his own, thumb stroking the knuckle scarred from sight mishaps. Theo sighed, amber eyes meeting hazel. Cascade offered me lead on the new tower in Belltown. Double the pay, corner office with a view that'd make you jealous. He paused, the weight of it settling. But it'd mean late nights, travel. Us, on borrowed time. Wesley's gut twisted, not from jealousy, but the echo of loss, his own exile, the years stolen by silence. And if you say yes? Theo's smile was bittersweet, fingers tightening. I say we make it work. Because you're my foundation, Wes. Not some skyline. They sealed it with a kiss across the table, slow and sure, the clink of glasses around them fading to white noise. But doubt lingered, a hairline crack in the mortar. The holidays approached like a freight train, Seattle decking itself in twinkling lights strung across the monorail tracks, the air crisp with pine from holiday markets. Harlan hosted Thanksgiving at his bungalow, a modest spread of turkey and fixings that drew a motley crew, loyal foremen with their families, a few architects from Theo's circle, even a tentative invite to Brody that bounced back undelivered. Laughter filled the space, tentative at first, then warm, as Harlan carved the bird with a steadier hand than Wesley remembered. You've got his touch, Harlan said later, nodding toward the pie Wesley had baked, apple, from their grandmother's recipe, crust flaky and spiced. Didn't know you could wield more than a hammer. Wesley chuckled, but the praise settled deep, a balm on old burns. Theo, across the room charming a foreman's kid with tales of New York subways, caught his eye and winked, that private language they'd built in glances and grazes. Christmas brought snow, rare and magical, blanketing the city in hush. Wesley and Theo strung lights on their porch, the strands twinkling against the white, then retreated inside for eggnog by the fire. Gifts exchanged were simple, a leather-bound sketchbook from Theo, pages whispering promises, a custom tool belt from Wesley, embossed with Theo's initials. They made love that night on the rug, slow and reverent, bodies mapping each other's contours as snowflakes danced beyond the frost-laced panes. I love you, Theo breathed against his skin, words a vow etched in warmth. I know, Wesley whispered back, holding him close as the world outside glittered. January thawed into routine, but undercurrent stirred. Cascade's bid had been a feint, but their CEO, a slick operator named Victor Lang from Theo's past, circled closer, lunches pitched as networking, emails laced with nostalgia. Wesley brushed it off at first, trusting the man who'd stood by him through Harlan's convalescence. But one evening, returning early from a site visit, he found Theo on the couch, phone in hand, Victor's name glowing on the screen. Just tying up loose ends, Theo said quickly, but his eyes darted, the lie thin as winter ice. Wesley nodded, throat tight, and retreated to the office, blueprints blurring under his stare. Betrayal's shadow, once Brody's, now crept into his own home, not theft of land, but of trust, the slow erosion of what they'd built. The fracture widened over weeks. Theo took the Belltown gig, temporary, he insisted, but nights stretched long, his laughter echoing from after-work drinks Wesley wasn't invited to. Argument simmered, it's work, Wes. Not everything's a goddamn conspiracy. Theo's frustration mirrored his own fears, words flying like splinters. Harlan noticed, pulling Wesley aside during a walkthrough of the latest rehab, a queen and charmer transformed into affordable units. Love's like a build, the old man said, tapping a reinforced beam. Test it early, or it crumbles late. Wesley sought solace in the work, pouring himself into a passion project, a community center in the Central District, designed for LGBTQ youth, walls alive with murals of reclaimed stories. Fundraisers buzzed, donors charmed by his quiet fire, but isolation gnawed. One rainy afternoon, alone in the half-framed shell, he broke, sobbing against a stud wall, the echo of Harlan's old slur mingling with Theo's growing distance, not a real man. Theo came that night, rain-soaked and contrite, Victor's influence confessed in halting breaths, a old flame, reignited by ambition, promises of partnership that tempted his drive. "I ended it," Theo vowed, pulling Wesley close. "You're my home. This city's too small for doubts." Forgiveness flowed, tentative, rebuilt brick by brick in therapy sessions and midnight talks, their bond tempered stronger. Spring bloomed, and with it, reconciliation's green shoots. Brody surfaced in May, gaunt and hollow-eyed, phoning from a Tacoma motel. "I fucked up, little brother. Need a lifeline." Harlan mediated the call, voice gruff but steady. "Blood don't wash off easy. Come see for yourself." Brody arrived days later, the family kitchen a neutral ground where apologies hung heavy as humidity. He joined the crew as a laborer, no perks, earning trust through sweat, his hammer swing syncing with Wesley's visions, a silent truce forming. The community center's ribbon cutting fell on a perfect June day, sun gilding the salmon weather vane atop the dome. Harlan cut the tape, Theo at Wesley's side, Brody in the crowd with a nod of pride. Youth streamed in, eyes wide with possibility, and Wesley felt it, the legacy shifting, not from rejection to conquest, but acceptance to creation. Yet the arc bent toward shadow once more. Harlan's checkup revealed spots on his lungs, the doctor's words a quiet thunder, early, treatable, but we caught it late. The diagnosis cracked the summer wide, family rallying in hospital vigils and home-cooked meals. Wesley balanced board meetings with bedside vigils, Theo's hand his constant. "We're Whitakers now," Theo joked through tears, stubborn as the rain. Harlan fought like he built, fierce, unyielding, chemo cycles blurring into fall. In lucid moments, he'd grip Wesley's hand. "You showed me, son. Manhood ain't in the measure. It's in the mending." The words, whispered in a room scented with antiseptic and autumn leaves, sealed old wounds. November brought remissions whisper, tentative as first frost. The family gathered for Thanksgiving redux, Brody's pie lopsided but heartfelt, laughter freer. Wesley and Theo, rings glinting on fingers from a courthouse ceremony the month prior, toasted to horizons. Seattle sprawled beyond, a canvas of reinvention, proving that even in fracture, foundations could rise anew. Winter gripped Seattle with unusual ferocity that year, the sound freezing at the edges in crystalline sheets that cracked under the prows of delayed ferries. Wesley navigated the slush-slick streets to the office, his SUV humming with the low growl of the heater, Theo dozing beside him after a red-eye from a conference in Portland. Marriage had woven them tighter, a legal knot that felt more like an embrace, but the demands pulled, Wesley's days a blur of site supervisions and investor calls, Theo's evenings lost to Victor's lingering shadow, now reduced to professional barbs but still stinging. Harlan's recovery was a marathon, not a sprint. The bungalow became a hub of hushed consultations, his frame filling out slowly on broths and optimism. "Doc says clean scans come spring," he'd declare over poker nights with the foreman, cards slapping the table like defiant applause. Wesley cherished these, the cigar smoke curling like old secrets, Harlan's laugh rumbling deeper than in years. Brody, too, had carved a niche, overseeing logistics with a meticulous eye that redeemed his past slips, his apologies evolving from words to works. But beneath the mending, Wesley's own doubts festered. Late nights, when the house creaked and Theo's snores filled the dark, he'd trace the wedding band on his finger, its cool metal a talisman against the whisper, "Enough." The company soared, Whitaker's Eco-Rehabs gracing architecture mags, a feature in Dwell praising the humanist heart of their designs, but success amplified scrutiny. Protests erupted at a downtown project, locals decrying gentrification's creep, voices chanting outside chain-link fences. "You're erasing us," one sign read, held by a woman with braided hair and eyes fierce as the rain. Wesley met them head-on, coffee in hand, listening as stories poured out, families priced out of Rainier Valley, histories paved over for lofts. It shook him, echoing his own displacement, the boy cast from home. He pivoted, reallocating budgets for community stipends, hiring local artists for facades that told tales of displacement and return. Theo applauded the shift, but Victor pounced in a rival spread, painting Whitaker as performative, the barb landing in bored whispers. Tension peaked at a gala in the Olympic Sculpture Park, chandeliers dripping light over tuxedoed elites sipping champagne amid Calder's iron giants. Wesley, in a tailored navy suit that hugged his frame, arm linked with Theo's in emerald velvet, felt the room's pulse. Harlan held court by the bar, Kane traded for a swagger stick, Brody charming donors with tales of reclaimed timber. But Victor slithered in, all polished teeth and ivy polish, clapping Wesley on the back. Heard you're going soft on the Valley build. Noble, but investors bite at fluff. Theo stiffened beside him, but Wesley turned, smile steel-edged. Soft? Now. Smart. Builds that last don't bulldoze roots. The exchange rippled, allies murmuring approval, but Victor's parting shot lingered, a glance at Theo, loaded with history. Home that night, the argument ignited. Theo, unwinding his tie, snapped, "You freeze me out there. Like I'm the enemy." Wesley paced the living room, fire-crackling accusations. "Because you hesitate every time he circles. Like old times." Words escalated, Theo's voice cracking on trust, Wesley's on proof, until Theo grabbed his shirt, pulling him close, their kiss a collision of fury and forgiveness, bodies crashing to the rug in a tangle of need. It was raw, reclaiming, sweat-slick skin affirming what words fractured. Dawn brought clarity, apologies brewed over coffee. Victor's poison, Theo admitted, head on Wesley's shoulder. From college, before I knew myself. He preys on ambition. They vowed boundaries, therapy resuming like maintenance on a cherished frame. Spring unfurled gently, cherry blossoms dusting the U district like confetti. Harlan's full remission arrived with fanfare, a backyard barbecue where the old man grilled salmon, smoke rising like prayers answered. To second acts, he toasted, glass raised to the circle of kin and crew. Brody, beer in hand, clinked with a grin. And third chances. Wesley's project in the Central District evolved into a beacon, the Harmony Hub, walls alive with murals of intertwined histories, spaces for workshops and warm meals. Opening day drew crowds, youth from the programs he'd championed sharing stages with elders, stories weaving like rebar. Theo's speech, microphone in hand, choked with pride, this isn't just build. It's belonging. Yet fate, capricious as Seattle's weather, twisted again. A routine inspection unearthed code violations on an older Whitaker site, a warehouse flip from Harlan's era, corners cut in haste. Fines loomed, headlines screamed legacy firms lapse, and fingers pointed inward. Brody confessed partial blame, his early oversight in the rush to expand, but the board wavered, whispers of ousting Wesley to restore trust. The crisis hit during a board retreat at a lakeside lodge in the Cascades, pines whispering secrets as rain drummed the roof. Wesley presented defenses, remediation plans, transparency audits, but dissent brewed, a faction led by a holdover loyal to Harlan's old guard. "You're innovative, son," one said, eyes hard, but roots run deep. "This feels unmoored." Harlan, invited as emeritus, rose unsteadily. "Unmoored? My boy's the anchor." His voice, gravel rough, commanded silence. "I cut those corners, chasing shadows. Wesley's mending what I broke. Trust the man who trusts himself." The vote swung, vindication sweet but sobering. Summer simmered with recovery's heat. Wesley and Theo escaped to the San Juans for a week, ferrying to Orcas Island where cabins nestled in meadows, waves lapping like lullabies. They hiked to the summit, hands clasped, the archipelago sprawling below, a mosaic of greens and blues. At the peak, Theo dropped to one knee, not with a ring but a vow renewed, "We're not perfect, but we're us. Build with me." Tears pricked Wesley's eyes, the yes-a whisper carried on wind. Nights by the fire, they dreamed expansions, national branches, global reaches, love as the load-bearing core. Back in the city, Brody's redemption flowered. Sober 6 months, he pitched a mentorship program for at-risk youth, hammers in hands teaching more than trades. Harlan beamed at the first session, his presence a quiet endorsement. "Family's what we forge," he told Wesley later, over bourbon on the porch, stars pricking the velvet sky. Fall harvest brought harvest of another kind, Cascade folded under scandal, Victor's embezzlement exposed in a DOJ probe. Theo's testimony, calm and cutting, sealed it, closure on a chapter. "Karma's got blueprints," he quipped, as they watched the news, curled on the couch. Thanksgiving gathered them fuller, Harlan's table groaning, new faces from the hub mingling with old. Toasts flowed to growth, to grace. As snow dusted the evergreens, Wesley realized the arc, from garage rejection to boardroom respect, from fractured bonds to forged futures, wasn't linear, but layered. Manhood, he'd learned, wasn't in the proving, but the persisting, loving through the leans and loads. The new year dawned crisp and clear, Seattle shaking off its winter shroud like a dog after a bath, streets steaming under tentative sun. Wesley steered through the morning commute, radio humming indie folk that Theo had cued, his husband's hand resting easy on his thigh. Marriage had settled into them like good mortar, the initial set hardening into something unshakable. Yet, as Whitaker's profile rose, national awards for sustainable design trickling in, Wesley felt the pull of expansion, a restlessness akin to the tide's inexorable draw. Harlan, robust in remission's glow, pushed it. "Time to branch, son. Portland, maybe Vancouver. Plant the flag." His eyes sparkled with the old fire, but tempered now, wisdom's patina. Over breakfasts at the bungalow, oatmeal laced with wild berries, they'd map strategies, Harlan's sketches on napkins echoing Wesley's youth. Brody contributed too, his logistics brain streamlining supply chains, the trio a trinity mending generational rifts. Theo's career paralleled, his role at a boutique firm yielding TEDx invites, talks on queer spaces in urban evolution, the drawing crowds. They balanced it with intention, date nights at hidden gems like the Walrus Mural Cafe in Ballard, where murals watched over plates of Mal's frights, weekends volunteering at the Harmony Hub, coaching teens in drafting dreams. Intimacy thrived, mornings tangled in sheets, afternoons stolen in empty models' homes, bodies a language of affirmation. But ambition's shadow lengthened. A headhunter from Chicago, flat accents and skyscraper promises, courted Wesley for a VP slot at a megafirm, salary that could fund adoptions they'd whispered of in quiet hours. Think of the reach, the recruiter cooed over video, pixels framing a skyline that dwarfed the Space Needle. Wesley demurred, but the seed took root, germinating doubts, stay small, or scale. Theo sensed it first, over a picnic in Gas Works Park, relics of old gasification tanks looming like ancient sentinels amid wildflowers. "You're pacing inside your skin," he said, feeding Wesley a strawberry, juice staining lips red. "What's the ghost?" Wesley leaned back on the blanket, Lake Union glittering below. "Growth. Harlan wants empires. I want enough." The confession unspooled, fears of losing self in the sprawl, of becoming the monolith he'd fled. Theo listened, then cupped his face. "Enough is us. The rest? We build together." Spring rains returned, nourishing the earth and their plans. Whitaker launched a Portland satellite, Wesley overseeing from afar, Theo tagging along for site tours that doubled as getaways. The office there buzzed with fresh energy, young architects with tattoos and ideas, blending Pacific Northwest grit with bold lines. Harlan visited once, hobbling through with pride, slapping backs and sharing yarns of frontier builds. "Your generation's got the green thumb," he conceded, over IPAs at a brewpub, hops bitter as old regrets. Home front bloom too. Brody met someone, a quiet carpenter named Ellis, with calloused hands and a laugh like gravel under tires. Family dinners incorporated him, awkward at first, then seamless, toasts to found family or clinking glasses. Wesley watched Harlan with Ellis, the old man's nods approving, a far cry from garage edicts. Summer heatwave baked the city, asphalt shimmering, drawing them to the coast. A cabin rental on the Olympic Peninsula, waves crashing symphonies, provided respite. Days hiking rainforests, ferns unfurling like secrets, nights on the deck, stars wheeling overhead, Theo's head on Wesley's lap as they spoke of futures, kids, perhaps, via surrogacy, a nursery in their expanding home. Lovemaking under the moon, sand-gritting skin, reaffirmed bonds. Yet crisis brewed oceanic. A storm hit, literal and figurative. Gale-force winds battered the Portland site, toppling a crane in a screech of metal, injuring 2 workers. News helicopters buzzed like vultures, headlines blaring Whitaker calamity. Investigations launched, fingers pointing to rushed permits, Brodus logistics under fire. My call, he admitted in the war room, face ashen. Cut corners to beat deadline. Wesley rallied, flying down with Theo, Harlan's voice crackling over speaker, fix it. Like family. They did, nights in temp trailers, poring over reports, compensating families with transparency that turned outrage to alliance. Media spun to redemption, but the toll carved deep, Wesley sleepless, Theo's worry lines etching permanent. Fall leaves turned, and with them, a pivot. Wesley declined Chicago, countering with a Whitaker bid for a massive Seattle waterfront redevelopment, mixed-use haven for arts and affordable housing. The pitch to City Council was a masterclass, slides of Harmony Hub successes, testimonials from Hub youth, Harlan's gravel testimonial ceiling. Won by a hair, the project became their opus. Thanksgiving swelled with victory's warmth, Ellis's pie joining the fray, stories of the storm shared like badges. Harlan raised a glass, to weathering. Winter whispered of more, Theo's book deal on urban queer spaces, Wesley's keynote at AIA conference. But personal tempests gathered. Adoption papers filed, the process a labyrinth of interviews and home studies, cracking open old wounds. A social worker's probing, tell us about your family dynamics, dredged Harlan's past slur, Wesley's voice faltering on the page. Theo held him through it, but vulnerability bred friction, you're pulling away, Theo accused one night, snow falling soft outside. Like I'm the risk. It's the system, Wesley snapped, judging us before we start. The fight cooled to ice, thawed in counseling, where truth surfaced, fear of repeating cycles, of fatherhood echoing Harlan's hardness. Spring brought approvals, a match with a surrogate in Tacoma, Hope's first kick visualized on ultrasound. Harlan wept at the news, grizzled hand on Wesley's shoulder. You'll be better than me, son. Already are. Summer's project broke ground, Earth Movers rumbling anthems. Brody, sober anchor, led crews with Ellis at his side. The family swelled, bellies and hearts rounding. Fall harvest reaped joys, Theo's book launch, pages bound with their story woven subtle. Wesley's award for visionary leadership, Harlan pinning the medal with trembling pride. Winter solstice, under strung lights, they gathered, Harlan, Brody and Ellis, Theo's sister flying west. As snow hushed the world, Wesley held Theo's hand over a bump of promise, realizing the true build, not empires of steel, but spans of soul, bridging divides with every heartbeat. The surrogate's pregnancy progressed like a well-tended build, milestones marked in sonograms and nursery blueprints, the Finney Ridge home expanding with a room painted in soft sages and mobiles of wooden planes. Wesley threw himself into the waterfront project, pilings driven deep into reclaimed tidelands, a foundation against the Sound's relentless lap. Theo balanced book tours with consults, his presence a steady pulse amid the chaos. Harlan's health, that fragile truce with time, held, but whispers of fatigue shadowed his vigor. Just old bones, he'd wave off, but Wesley caught the coughs, the way his steps lagged on walks along Alki Beach, gulls wheeling overhead like indifferent judges. Brody, ever the fixer, arranged checkups, Ellis's quiet support a buffer. Family wove tighter, weekly dinners where Ellis's stories of Montana ranches blended with Theo's urban anecdotes, laughter bridging gaps. The adoption journey, bureaucratic beast, yielded joys, names debated over wine, Finn for a boy, Lila for a girl, visions of park picnics under the Space Needle's glow. Summer swelled the belly and the sight, heat mirages dancing over girders. A milestone party at the Hub celebrated dual births, project's frame rising, baby's kicks confirmed. Youth from the programs performed spoken word verses of Becoming, echoing Wesley's arc. Harlan, dapper in linen, danced a slow turn with a teen mentor, his grin boyish. Life's a rebuild, he toasted, arm around Wesley. Yet undercurrents eddied. Victor, disgraced but unbowed, resurfaced via a podcast, veiled jabs at woke builders like Whitaker, stirring online trolls. Doxing threats peppered Wesley's inbox, slurs evoking garage nights. Theo fielded the worst, his protectiveness flaring, block them. We're bulletproof. But vulnerability pierced. One midnight, scrolling venom, Wesley shattered a mug against the sink, shards scattering like his composure. Theo found him there, sweeping fragments, pulling him to the floor in a cradle of limbs. You're enough, Theo murmured, kisses salving. There hates the crack, not you. Full rains returned, greening the site into skeletal grace. The baby arrived early, a boy, Finn Harlan Whitaker, squalling into October chill, tiny fists waving defiance. Hospital rooms bloomed with balloons, Harlan's tears tracing canyons on weathered cheeks as he held his grandson, naming rights whispered, strong name for a strong line. Parenthood upended rhythms, sleepless nights rocked in gliders, days juggling bottles and blueprints. Theo adapted seamlessly, his paternal instinct a revelation, singing lullabies in lilting Portuguese from his Brazilian roots, Finn's coos replies. Wesley marveled, old doubts dissolving in gummy smiles. Winter brought trials. Harlan's cough deepened, scans revealing recurrence, metastatic, the oncologist's tone leaden. Aggressive, but we've options. The bungalow became hospice-light, family rotating vigils, air thick with monitors beeps. Brody shouldered most, Ellis his rock, while Wesley balanced daddy duties with board crises, a subcontractor scandal threatening timelines. The confrontation came soft, in Harlan's dim-lit room, for drip a metronome. Regrets? Wesley asked, Finn asleep on his chest. Harlan's hand, veined maps, clasped his. One big. Pushing you away. Thought I was forging steel, broke the mold. His voice rasped. You're the real build, son. Love like yours. That's manhood. Tears fell unbidden, Wesley's not a seal. Harlan slipped days later, under a full moon frosting the evergreens, passing with Brody's grip and Theo's prayer. The funeral packed the waterfront chapel, eulogies from crews and kids, Harlan's life a timber tall. Grief carved hollows, Wesley navigating fog with Finn's warmth as compass. Spring thawed the ice, memorial site breaking ground, a park bench by the sound, plaque reading Harlan Whitaker, builder of bridges. Brody scattered ashes there, wind carrying to waves. Summer healed in increments, family trips to the peninsula, Finn's first steps on sand, laughter reclaiming space. Theo's book hit bestseller lists, precedes funding hub expansions. Whitaker thrived, Portland outpost flourishing under a protege. Fall leaves swirled, and with them, a new venture, Wesley launching a foundation for queer youth in trades, Hammers as empowerment. Brody co-led, Ellis's designs infusing heart. Winter solstice gathered them anew, Finn toddling amid lights, stories of Harlan woven into carols. As snow fell, Wesley held Theo close, Finn between, the circle complete. Legacy wasn't inheritance, but ignition, passing flames, not chains, into hands ready to hold. Years folded like well-worn blueprints, Finn's laughter echoing through the Finney Ridge home now alive with his chaos, toys strewn like site debris, walls finger-painted in rebellion. Wesley, at 35, wore fatherhood like a favorite flannel, rumpled, comforting, lines around his eyes from squinting at both spreadsheets and storybooks. Theo, ever the artist, captured it in sketches, Finn's curls mirroring his, Wesley's gaze softened by domestic dawn. Whitaker had metastasized healthily, satellites in Vancouver and Boise, a reputation for humane builds preceding them. Brody helmed the Northwest Ops, his marriage to Ellis a steady joist, their adopted daughter Mia a whirlwind joining Finn's crew at family gatherings. The Harlan Foundation flourished, scholarships sending queer kids to trade schools, their testimonials fuel for Wesley's fire. Life's rhythm pulsed, school runs along leaf-choked streets, evenings at the dinner table debating dinosaurs over pasta, weekends hiking the Issaquah Alps where Finn chased squirrels, Theo's hand in Wesley's a constant. Intimacy evolved, less frantic, more profound, mornings stolen before the alarm, bodies familiar as home. Yet midlife murmured. At a AIA summit in San Francisco, amid bay fog and bridge spans, Wesley keynoted on legacy without loss, his voice steady recounting Harlan's evolution. Applause thundered, but backstage, a mirror reflected graying temples, a paunch from desk days. Who am I now? The question lingered on the flight home, Theo's head on his shoulder, Finn's drawing clutched like talisman. Theo noticed, as always. Over coffee in their sunlit kitchen, Finn napping upstairs, he broached, "You're brooding. Like when we met." Wesley confessed the itch, stagnation spectre, the fear of peaking early. Harlan built an empire. Am I just curating? Theo's eyes, still amber fire, held him. You're living it. That's the build. They recommitted, sabbatical planned, a road trip tracing America's veins, father-son lessons in vastness. Summer road tripped them cross-country, highways unspooling from Seattle's green embrace to Montana's big skies, Finn wide-eyed at bison herds, Theo narrating history like epic verse. Badlands carved canyons in souls, Route 66 relics whispering reinvention. In Nashville, queer bars pulsed with fiddle and freedom, Wesley dancing loose, shedding skins. Eastward, New York loomed, Theo's old haunt, skyscrapers clawing clouds. A Whitaker bid for a Brooklyn co-op pulled them in, nights in lofts overlooking the East River, Finn splashing in Central Park fountains. Victor's ghost? Buried, but echoes in competitor snipes. Wesley countered with vision, inclusive designs for immigrant enclaves, winning hearts and contracts. Fall returned them transformed, the trip a reset. Wesley launched internal reforms, work-life Sabbaths, mental health days, modeling vulnerability. Brody embraced it, Mia's school play his proudest sight. Winter brought frost and fruition, Finn's 4th birthday, a backyard bash with hub kids, cakes towering like girders. Harlan's bench, now wreathed in offerings, stood sentinel. Spring unearthed old earth. Clearing the bungalow for renters, Wesley found letters, Harlan's to his college love, yellowed confessions of suppressed heart. Reading by lamplight, tears blurred ink, I chose safe over soul. Don't you? Shared with Brody, it bonded them deeper, a pact to live loud. Summer's waterfront masterpiece unveiled, the Harlan, towers intertwined with green veins, plazas pulsing with markets and murals. Dedication drew thousands, Finn cutting ribbon with comically oversized shears, mayors and mentors toasting. To Bridges, Wesley spoke, Theo beside, family arrayed. Not just of steel, but spirit. Yet life's joists creak. Theo's wanderlust stirred, a fellowship in Berlin, urban renewal siren call. 6 months, he proposed over wine, eyes alight. Wesley's gut knotted, echoes of early distances, but love urged yes. Go. We'll hold the line. Fall saw Theo depart, airport kiss lingering, Finn's waves tear-streaked. Wesley parentade solo, nights long but laced with video calls, Theo's tales of spree canals, Finn's drawings mailed like bridges. Distance honed appreciation, gratitude texts turning erotic, anticipation building. Winter solstice, Theo home, reunion fireworks, airport sprint, bodies colliding in joy, Finn sandwiched between. The family whole, lights twinkling, Wesley realized arc circle, separation strengthening spans, returns reaffirming roots. Years hence, Finn at 10, the cycle renewed, his first crush, a classmate's shy glance, Wesley's counsel gentle, heart's your truest tool. Wield it true. Theo nodded, pride paternal. Legacy? Not in ledgers, but lives touched, hub alumni building their own, Brodis Mia sketching dreams. Wesley, graying gracefully, looked to Harlan's bench, waves eternal, knowing the build endures in every brave step forward. Decades distilled to essence, Seattle's skyline evolved under Whitaker's hand, towers like sentinels, green and gracious, the Harlan a crown jewel hosting galas and gatherings. Wesley, at 52, moved with the assurance of seasoned timber, silver threading his hair, laugh lines mapping joys. Theo, parallel in age and grace, consulted globally, their home a haven of eclectic art and echoing feet, Mia and Finn, now teens, orbits expanding but tethered. Brody and Ellis's union deepened, their ranch outside Tacoma a retreat of horses and hearths, Mia's veterinary dreams budding. Family pilgrimages their marked seasons, Thanksgiving turkeys smoked slow, summer barbecues under star-pricked skies. Wesley's days blended boardrooms with mentorships, the foundation a force propelling queer artisans nationwide. A memoir brewed, forged not found, chapters on Harlan's ghost and Theo's light, catharsis inked. Finn navigated adolescence's tempests, school crushes blooming boyish, identity questions whispered in night talks. Like you and Dad, he'd ask, Wesley's nod affirming, exactly. Love finds its level. Theo's stories of Berlin boys and Boston beats wove normalcy. Theo's health faltered first, a routine scan catching pancreatic whispers, early but insistent. We've beaten worse, he quipped, amber eyes defiant, but Wesley's world tilted, echoes of Harlan's fade. Treatments commenced, chemo's rhythm a cruel counterpoint to life's pulse. Summer saw them retreat to AUKUS, cabin memories resurfacing, Finn interning at the Portland office, Mia riding waves with cousins. Theo weakened, but spirit soared, lectures from bed, book revisions with Wesley's pen. Our story's the bestseller, he'd murmur, hand in hand. Fall stripped leaves, and strength. Hospital in First Hill, same as Harlan's, irony bitter. Family encircled, Brodis vigils, Ellis's soups, kids' drawings taping walls. Theo slipped gentle, last words a breath, build on, love. The view's eternal. Grief's gale howled winter through, Wesley adrift in fog, Finn's shoulder his crutch, Mia's hugs anchors. Spring thawed resolve, Theo's foundation launched, urban spaces for the marginalized, his legacy living. Years healed hues. Finn, at 20, came out fully, proud, partnered with a sculptor named Kai, their art echoing Theo's vision. Wedding in the Harlan Plaza, rain blessing vows, Wesley's toast tear-choked, love's the load we carry light. Brody retired graceful, handing reins to Mia, her designs innovative, inclusive. Wesley stepped back too, advisory role freeing travels, with Finn and Kai to Europe, tracing Theo's haunts. At 68, Wesley revisited the garage, sold long ago, now a co-op cafe buzzing youth. Sitting at a corner table, coffee steaming, he penned the memoir's close, manhood? Not in measure, but mercy. In owning wounds, earning wings. Dad's words scarred, his silence healed. Now, the company and respect are mine, but the heart? Shared eternally. Sun-slanted gold, Seattle alive beyond, a testament, from fracture to flourish, every build a bridge back to self.